صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله وعلى آل بيتك الطيبين الطاهرين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة غريب يا مظلوم كربلاء سيدي يا أبا عبد الله لأندبنك صباحا ومساء ولأبكين عليك بدل الدموع دما يا ليتنا ثم يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز فوزا عظيما. قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الكريم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فأقم وجهك للدين حنيفا فطرة الله التي فطر الناس عليها لا تبديل لخلق الله ذلك الدين القيم ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Please enlighten this majlis with 3 loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
First and foremost, we begin our majlis with sending our condolences to our beloved Imam, the Imam of our time, Imam Mahdi Ajalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. And we send our condolences to our great scholars and maraja and to the entire Islamic world. For the crescent of Muharram has appeared, and many narrations indicate that when the crescent of Muharram would appear, our Imams we would see the sadness in their face. They would no longer be happy. We would see that they are sad for at least the 10 nights of Muharram, for they will start wearing the black clothes, indicating the season of sorrow has started. So we as their followers, we also follow what they taught us to do. And this is the month of sorrows, and we begin our sorrow in this evening where the crescent of Muharram has appeared. And inshallah, after that, we will begin our lecture with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
In a world where we sometimes feel lost, we don't know which direction we are heading towards, and we feel that many forces are pulling us from every side. Sometimes it is our desires, others it is the social pressure, others it's the peer pressure of our friends. It could be different forces that takes us left and right. And with these forces, sometimes we are unsure if the decision that we are taking is the right one or no. We are unsure which direction we are heading towards. In that state of cluelessness, we have no clue what we are doing, we are lost. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in the holy verse, فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا. Stand in a steadfast towards the upright religion. Allah is telling us to stand towards the upright religion. So why is Allah telling us so? Because He continued in the verse where He said, فَطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا. This is the nature upon which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created His creations. So, it is the nature of the creation of Allah to stand or turn their face towards the religion of Allah. Allah is telling us this is the way where you can find stability. This is the way where you can fight this cluelessness that you might feel. But a question that we may ask ourselves is, how is it the case? If I turn my face towards the religion, at the end of the day we are all followers of Ahlul Bayt, we are all Muslims, believers in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in the message of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, and that it is the final message. But we still have this feeling of cluelessness. Sometimes we feel lost, sometimes we feel pulled from every side by different forces. So how is it that when we stand towards, face ourselves towards the religion of Allah, we see stability? How is it the case? And how is it the case that this is the nature upon which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us? If we want to understand this, then we need to try and understand many points in regards to this holy verse. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He says فَطْرَةَ النَّاسِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا, فَطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا, the nature upon which Allah has created His creation, we need to understand what does fatra mean. And once we analyze what does fatra mean, we will analyze if worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is part of our fatra, is part of our innate nature, it's something that we need or not. Once we analyze the meaning of fatra and try to analyze the verse that we began the majlis with. So let's begin by analyzing the meaning of fatra. Fatra is the nature upon which Allah has created the creation. So for example, the fatra of a seed, the nature of a seed, if the right environment is provided, its nature, it should grow and become a tree and become a plant. Similarly, for example, the fitra, the nature of an animal, is, for example, to protect itself from danger. This is why we see animals, once they see danger, they run away. They try to defend themselves. For example, it is the fitra of the mother, even when it comes to the animal world. The fitra of the mother to protect its child. This is why we see many animals, once they give birth, they do their best to try and protect its infants. This is fatra, the nature upon which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created His creations. So what is the fatra of the insan? What is the nature upon which Allah has created insan? To the point that the Quran is alluding towards worship being part of our fatra. The fitrah of the insan, if we want to understand it, we can look at it from two different aspects. One aspect is the physical aspect, the body aspect. It is in our natural inclination to protect ourselves. Even if you are a child, if there is a child, we show him fire, and the moment he touches the fire, he would remove his hand. This is part of his nature, to run away from harm, to protect ourselves against harm, against potential harm. This is part of our nature. This is one part of our fitrah in the physical sense. Another part of our fitrah in the physical sense is, for example, the inclination towards nutrition. When I feel hungry, I feel that I lost energy, I look for food that gives me energy. And this is the case throughout the history of humanity. When the human being gets hungry, they look for a food that gives them nutrition, for they can function with that energy that they get from the food. So this is also part of the fitrah, part of the nature of the human being to look for food, to try and keep themselves nutritious. Now, fitrah can also be seen from the spiritual aspect, from the aspect of the soul. The same way that we can see it from the physical aspect, we can also see it from the spiritual aspect. How is it the case? Sometimes we refer to it as the inner voice within us. There is an inner voice that usually tells us, to a certain extent, this is right and this is wrong. Think of it this way. Now, when we see the news, sometimes we see the picture of children being hungry, sometimes children being murdered. Every human being, when they see that picture, they think this is wrong. The inner voice within them thinks this is wrong. What is this inner voice that tells them this is wrong? This is what we call fitrah. It's the natural way that Allah has created us and created that inner voice within us that tells us this is wrong. This is also part of our fitrah. Think of it this way, the spiritual aspect of fitrah. The same way that we have an immune system for our body that fights the viruses and the illnesses, the same way we have an immune system for our soul. That when we see something wrong, we ourselves say this is wrong. And when we see something right and beautiful, we try to go towards that which is right and beautiful. It is part of our fitrah. This is the spiritual aspect. Now if we understand this, understand both the physical and the spiritual aspect of fitrah. This is the nature upon which Allah has created human beings. And this is why Allah says in the holy verse that we began the majlis with, فطرة الله التي فطر الناس عليها. This is the nature upon which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the human beings. So humanity throughout history, no matter how progressive we get, we have these natural inclinations within us, whether it be the physical part of the fitrah or the spiritual part of the fitrah. Now, if we understand it, let's go one step further when it comes to assessing the fitrah of the insan. We, as part of our fitrah, as part of our nature as human beings, we seek, if not perfection, then things that we think make us better human beings. The better option. Think of it this way. If I'm offered the same job, the exact same job, with the exact same conditions, by two different companies, one of them is offering me the minimum wage, the other is offering me a bit more than the minimum wage. Which one will I choose? the second one, the higher one, because it has more benefit for me and I'm not losing anything. So it is also part of our nature to seek that which has benefit for me, to seek that which has interest for me, at least what I think has benefit for me. Maybe I'm wrong, but when I thought about it, I thought this is the right option for me. This is the option that will give me benefit. It is also part of our fitrah to do so. Now, if we accept this, then every one of us are human beings that seek that which benefit them. If we function according to our fitrah, of course, somebody, his fitrah can be covered, his fitrah can be not functioning the same way that the body could be not functioning because of an illness. The fitrah could also not function due to an illness, and we will cover this. But the person who works according to his fitrah, he will seek that which has benefit for him. Now, if every one of us seek that which has a benefit for him, then at some point there will be a conflict between our benefits. This is why, because at the end of the day we are social beings. We need to interact with others. Whether it be by nature or practically, we have to deal with others. Some say it's due to nature. The nature of the human being is that he's a social being. He has to deal with others. Some say it's part of our fitrah. Others say no, practically you have to deal with others, whether you are a social being or not. At the end of the day, if I want to function in life, I have to deal with people. And we have different interests, different things that benefit us. Therefore, there will be a clash between our interests. Therefore, we as human beings decided to make a certain law that governs us. Whether it be the law of the government or a law that we all agree upon. And this is, even if we read the social sciences, what is the justification of the government? They say this is the reason. Because every human has their own autonomy, their own freedom. But because if everyone has his own autonomy, then there will be clash between the people. So we put law and order to be able to govern the lives of the people. So again, part of our fitrah is to seek that which makes us better human beings, that which has interest for us, that which benefits us. Our interests clash. My benefit could clash with your benefit. His benefit could clash with his benefit. Then we as human beings came together and decided law and order is the best thing for us not to clash with each other, for us not to kill each other for one benefit. Then, based on that law and order, we decided that this is your property, this is my property, this is how we can exchange properties, and so on and so forth. It's all natural. If we look historically speaking, all human societies had some form of order and law. It's the natural human thing to do. Otherwise, there's a clash. So far, we're all speaking through fitrah, through the nature of the human. If we accept this, now let's go one step further. Our fitrah, this inner voice that we spoke about, directs us towards some higher power. Because I see order around me, there is some form of order around me, and this order cannot come from nowhere, cannot be chaotic. There is no chaos, there is an order in this universe. The atoms, the sun, the moon, so on and so forth. There is some form of order. My inner voice directs me that there is some form of power that runs this universe, this order. Someone would come to Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. He would tell him, talk to me about Allah, talk to me about God, tell me more about God. That person was skeptical, he was in doubt, he had some doubt. Imam al-Sadiq would tell him, you are a sailor, right? That person is a sailor. He would tell him yes. He would tell him, have you been in the middle of the sea lost? He said, yeah, we've been in such instances. The Imam would tell him, did you reach to a point where you almost had to drown, the whole ship would have drowned? The companion or the person would say yes to the Imam, I have been in such situation. The Imam would tell him, in such difficult situation, did your soul get attached to something wishing that that thing would save you? The person would say, yes, I lost hope and I just was wishing some power would help me and save me. The Imam would tell him, this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This thing that you got attached to. In a modern example, many of us may not be in such instance. A modern example is in an airplane. Think you are in an airplane, the airplane, suddenly all the face masks gets dropped, and the pilot says, I lost control. Now every one of us will be in a state of fear. We can't do anything, none of us is in control of the plane. What state, what thing will our soul attach to? Where will our hope be? Just some form of higher power, that hoping that this higher power would solve it. Even if in the movies, if you see when they depict this scene when the plane is shaking and so on, it shows you everyone is in fear and they are hoping for some higher power to solve things. Sometimes as a joke, they depict a character to do some form of prayers. But this joke has some reality to it. So this attachment we have to a higher power, this is also part of our nature. So Fitra leads us towards a higher power. Fitra leads us towards an order and law and so on. Now it is our decision. If I want to function in life, have a life where I can function and put a law that is in the interest of everyone. Do I want to follow the law and order that is put by us humans who are limited? We have limited scope at the end of the day. We may not see the bigger picture. We would just see what we think is of benefit to us. Or do we want to follow the law that the Creator, that this higher power has set for me? I'll give you an example. Some countries, because they have a population problem, they put a certain law that you can only have one child, restricting the number of children. For example, China had this law, Iran had this law. So what they saw is, we want to see the benefit for our population, and this is the best option for us to limit the number of children per family. Now, Islamically, we don't have such a thing. Rather the opposite. The narrations indicate that the more children, the more blessings, generally speaking. What was the result of these countries later on? They had an aging population. Because now every family has one child. Few generations later, most of the population are elderly who cannot function. And they had an aging problem. Now, these same countries would actually push for more children. So usually we as humans, we have a limited scope. We may put a certain law thinking that this law will benefit us. This law is of our interest. But we don't know if in the long run this is the beneficial policy or not. So what is better? For us to follow the law that we ourselves think is good with our limited scope, or the law that the higher power that my Creator has set for me, and He is all-knowing of all of my interests. He knows what is best for me and for us as a society. So this is what Allah means by أَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ. Direct your face towards the upright religion. Because these are laws that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set for us for our own interest. He knows what is best for us. He has the bigger picture. And if we truly look at it, we find that all the creatures submit to the laws and will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In other words, this submission, we call it worship. All of the creatures, they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The sun, Allah created it for it to rise in the morning and for it to set in the evening. And it is doing its job. It's submitting to the will of Allah. The trees, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created them, and their job is to give us, some of them to give us nutrition, others to provide us with a better ecosystem and so on. And they're doing their job. The sky is doing its job, the earth is doing its job, the galaxy is doing its job, and so on. All the creatures of Allah is submitting to the will of Allah. And this concept we have in the Quran. تسبح له السماوات السبع والأرض ومن فيهن وإن من شيء إلا يسبح بحمده ولكن لا تفقهون تسبيحه. The seven heavens glorifies Allah, and the earth, and everything that is in between. And there is nothing that does not glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, you cannot fathom their form of glorification. So everything Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created submits and worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, even our body. Our body functions as Allah has created it. The heart pumps 24/7. It's functioning as Allah wished for it to do so. The eyes is giving me vision. The mouth I can speak with, I can eat with, and so on. So even our bodies submit to the will of Allah. There is one extra step that we humans need to take to be part of this ecosystem. And that step is the second step of worship. The first step is a physical form of worship, it's a natural worship, we can't do much about it. Everything is submitting to the will of Allah. The second step, no, it's a voluntary form of worship. It is when I decide, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are the only creator, He's given the option, the choice for us to choose whether we want to submit or not. Imma shakiran wa imma kafur. Allah has created us. Either we are thankful and we submit to His will, or we are kafur, we deny His mercy upon us. It's up to us. So now we choose. We submit to the will of Allah, to the laws that He has put for me. Then I become part of this bigger ecosystem that Allah has created. And if I do not, then I end up following or worshipping some other form of entity. That entity could be my own desires. And Allah refers to those by saying, أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. Have you not seen those who have taken the Lord to be their own desires? It could be shaitan. يَا بَنِي آدَمَ أَلَمْ أَعْهَدْ إِلَيْكُمْ أَلَّا تعبد الشيطان. Have I not given you the promise to not worship shaitan? So human beings, if they don't worship the will of Allah, they end up worshipping something else. We have to, as we said earlier, we have to follow some form of law or order. Now if we follow the Almighty, then we are following something that is constant, that is not changing, that is giving me stability. If I follow another entity, one day I follow my desires, other day I follow shaitan, other day I follow my friends, other day I follow society, I get lost. Which we referred to earlier, being pulled from every side, not knowing which direction I'm heading towards. So actually, if I decide, as the verse tells me, to face the upright religion, then the effect of that is, number one, psychological effect. I know that I have attached myself to the complete. I know that the decisions I am making is for my own benefit because Allah has ordered me to, even if I don't see that benefit. So I feel some form of stability because every action I'm doing, now I know that this action is benefiting me, even if I cannot see that benefit. If I follow other entities, no. One day I will think that my benefit is with this person, the other day I will think it's with that person, the other day I will think, no, I will follow whatever my mind say, and so on and so forth. I'll get lost at the end. The second effect is a behavioral one. I know when I submit to the will of Allah, then my actions are constant. I have the same values. I have constant values. Not values that change when I change the society I live in, or when the conditions of life change. My values are one. And thus, my behavior is the same behavior. And the third effect is a social one. Now when I submit to the will of Allah, and I deal with others, I look at not only the benefit of this world, rather the benefit of this world and the hereafter. So when I deal with people, I know everything is noted down. And there is judgment on the day of judgment. I cannot play the system. But if I don't see that there is a day of judgment, then if my benefit is to play the system, I'll play the system. There is no day of judgment anyways. I'm benefiting. So even from a social point of view, submitting to the will of Allah has an effect. So let's reread the verse that we began with. فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا. So direct your face towards the upright religion. فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا. The nature, the fitrah upon which Allah has created the people. This fitrah, ذلك الدين القيم. فطرة الله التي فطر الناس عليها لا تبديل لخلق الله. Allah doesn't change His creation. It is one. We humans have this inner voice, have this fitrah within us from day one. ذلك الدين القيم. This is the value of a religion. And deen in the Quran, the word deen, according to some of the mufassirin, means a way of life. This is the way of life that has value. The other ways of life, they're all perishable. ذلك الدين القيم ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. However, most people are not aware of that. So a question would be left. If this is the fitrah and this is the nature upon which Allah has created us with, and when we say Islam is deen al-fitrah, is the religion of fitrah, how come most of the people are not aware of this if it is in our nature, or our nature goes hand in hand with Islam as we establish? Why is it that most people are not aware that the way of Islam is the way that matches fitrah? The reason is the same way we establish that fitrah is like the immune system for the soul. The same way that the immune system for the body could be affected. May Allah protect all of us, but there are certain illnesses that weakens the immune system in the body. Similarly, there are things that weakens fitrah, weakens this immune system that we have in our soul, weakens this inner voice. And these things, when they weaken the inner voice within us, we no longer see or feel that this is right or this is wrong. What are things that could weaken this inner voice? One of them, for example, is upbringing, the child's upbringing. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi would say, يولد المرء على الفطرة. The human being is born upon fitra. Then it is his parents that make him Christian or make him a Jew or make him, depending on their own religion, follow their own religion. So the upbringing of the child affects fitra of the child. This is why sometimes we see that a child feels that this is wrong, but the parents pushes him towards it. Say, no, do it, it's fine, no worries. That weakens the fitra of the child. So the upbringing is one thing that weakens the fitra, and that inner voice gets silenced. Another factor that weakens fitra is the society or the environment that we put ourselves in. I don't think any child or any human being who is rational and in their mind would think that stealing is something good. However, sometimes we see in certain environments, because of poverty, because of wrong friends, because of peer pressure, somebody would steal and he would tell you, what's wrong with that? That's okay. Why? Because it is the environment that he put himself in, changed his view, and the inner voice that tells him this is wrong no longer functions. And this happens in so many ways. Not only in stealing, in many things that we think they are wrong, they become normalized to us through, for example, media. We see it in the movies, we see it in the advertisements. Slowly, even though we may not do it, but we don't think it's as wrong as we used to think. For example, we know drinking alcohol is haram. And sometimes we feel some form of disgust toward alcohol. But the more we see it in the street, and the movies, and the banners, and the advertisements, yes, I won't drink. But I don't have this feeling of disgust toward alcohol anymore. So it is the environment that also plays a role in normalizing wrong things and silencing that inner voice within us. Otherwise, we all have this inclination towards the right religion. Somebody came to the Imam and he asked him about this verse that we recited. فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا. He asked him, what does this verse mean? What is fitra? What is this nature that Allah has created us upon? The Imam Sadiq would tell him, فَطَرَهُمْ عَلَى تَوْحِيدٍ. He has created them with the inclination towards his tawheed. So every human has this inclination towards tawheed. How? If the fatra is maintained safe, if we have the right fatra, if that inner voice remains sound, then we would reach to this tawheed. This is the right fatra. This is why we see on the day of Karbala, for example, we see some people, their fatra was still alive. Like, for example, Harb. In the last moment, his voice spoke, where he said, إِنِّي أُخَيِّرُ نَفْسِي بَيْنَ الْجَنَّةِ وَالنَّارِ. I am choosing between Jannah and the hellfire. Why? Because his fitra spoke. His fitra was not dead. Others, shooting an arrow at an infant, what sort of fitra is this? Dead inner voice. So in Karbala we see two camps. A camp that has a right fatra, a fatra that is preserved, a sound inner voice within them. Other camp, no fatra. It was dead. And the reasons for this, inshallah, we'll discuss in one of the lectures. What was the environment of the Umayyads before Ashura, and how it killed the fitra of so many individuals, including the camp of Umar ibn Sa'd. Inshallah, with this, I will end the English part of the lecture. and move into the Arabic part after the Salat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad.